This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I am your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, two small devils on each of my shoulders, ushering in a new year of fun. This week, I'm joined by Paloma Deerfield.
Hello.
And our friend from the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I'm very excited to talk to both of you because it is 2025. We did it. We finally made it. We released our Christmas episode for New Year's, classic IRCB moment. We have so much to do this year. Honestly, I can't even talk about all of it. We're announcing so much stuff on the 19th when we release our annual episode to people, or I guess we'll be live on Twitch to record our annual episode. The actual annual episode will go out on the 22nd. We have at least two big announcements. One of them is the biggest thing we've ever announced in IRCB history. And I know that sounds like a lot of hyperbole, but it's not. It is genuinely one of the biggest things we've ever done. And the things I'm going to announce as part of that have me floored. Like, I've been texting angrily, excitedly, frustratedly. I don't know. Every single emotion is going through my body talking about this with the rest of the IRCB crew in such a good way. Like, it's all positive and it is so exciting. But you'll have to wait. I'm sorry. Until the 19th, make sure to join us live on twitch.tv/IRCB podcast or on YouTube, youtube.com/@IRCB. You can watch us live. We're going to be talking about all of that, as well as doing our big, just like celebratory welcome to 10 years of IRCB, because I don't know if you guys knew this. I've been keeping track of it, but we're hitting the beginning of year 10 of I Read Comic Books. Like, this whole show started back in 2015 and year 10 starts on our annual episode. It is insane. I've been screaming into this microphone for too long. Danny, Paloma, any thoughts before we dive into our regular shtick?
I'm trying to think of anything that I've done that's taken 10 years or that I've consistently done for 10 years.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything. Even my last job was not 10 years. So good on you, Mike. Good on you on the game.
Thanks.
Yeah, truly. Like, this 10 years is huge. It's an insane milestone. And I feel like ahead of the game in terms of podcasting, let alone comic podcasts. Like, this is wild.
And it's funny because we are not the first, and I don't think we're going to be the last. But the fact is, we really started at this moment when I think podcasting was really starting to escalate and grow in such a way that no one really thought was going to make it into like an almost $1 billion industry. Now, IRCB is part of a minute atom-sized speck of that industry. I do not think we bring in anything closely resembling what those big podcasts out there do. Let alone medium, let alone small-sized podcasts. But
are you announcing our meme coin?
Yeah.
IRCB meme coin?
Okay, Danny, you're giving it away. The thing we're announcing on the 19th is the IRCB coin that's coming out. It's going to be $on IRCB. I can't wait. Everybody put all your money into it. I promise we are not going to pump and dump this thing. I promise. No, we are not doing that. If you don't know, we have our NFT shit list on our website that's still live on ircbpodcast.com. And you can go check that out. We have a lot of thoughts about what we think about NFTs and some of the Web3 stuff. Which also brings me to another announcement that I want to get into, which is we launched our Best of Comic Books 2024 last year, or of all last year. Basically, I talked to all the folks on IRCB. I said, hey, tell me what your favorite books were that were published in 2024. Give me a couple sentences of why they were your favorites. And we put a link on our website about that. Some incredible books on there. A couple of them I may have put on my, oh God, I forgot that came out last year. I need to read this thing. But overall, incredible picks. Mary Tyler Moorhawk up there, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, The Ultimates, Ultimate Spider-Man, I think made someone's list. Maybe not. I don't remember.
List.
Made your list. Right. So incredible books, plus a bunch more that I haven't announced there. So go check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes for that. And I swear to God, we're going to get into this podcast. But I have one more small announcement, and that is that the IRCB annual listener survey is live. We're doing, again, $25 giveaway to Amazon. If you want, or a gift card or donation of your choice, you let us know just for filling it out, giving us your email. We're not putting you on a list or anything. We just want to be able to say, hey, I want to give you this prize that you may or may not have won. Just asking people what they thought of the show over the last year. That's also going to be linked in our show notes. So many things in our show notes this week and over the next couple weeks as we get to the annual. It's a big couple of weeks for IRCB here starting off, just like it is every single year. So with all of that said, I got 2 legally mandated questions that I need to ask you because we got to get to talking about comic books, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Danny.
Mike, I've been very, very well. Although I will say, today will have dropped by like 20 to 30 degrees in Texas
Oh,
as of the recording, because that cold front's coming in. So like we woke up and it was like 65, and we're gonna go to sleep and it's gonna be like 22.
rip, dude. Oh my
Oh.
gosh.
Yeah. So this morning I was up early taking out a window AC unit that I have, so we could actually close the window. And normally it's not too bad, but if it gets down in the 20s, I don't want to have any of the heat leaking out. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting week here. Luckily we don't see any like actual weather. It's just gonna be cold. So as long as it's only cold and there's nothing on the ground, we should be able to continue, especially on Wednesday, so I can go get my comics. That's the real worry there.
I
That
know
comics will
that was
get
the thing that
delayed.
you were looking forward to doing. I know. So,
The past 2 weeks have been so irregular, right? Because Christmas was a new comic book day, so like our shops were not open, and then on New Year's, like we're doing New Year's stuff. I don't want to mess with anybody's holiday. I'll wait a day to get my comics. So
mhm.
I'm ready to get back on a regular schedule. We finally did on my show. We finally did our best of 2024. So like that list of like 20 things, I finally was able to narrow it down
I was gonna say,
to five or so things, and that's a weight off my shoulders too. But that just goes to show you how much good stuff there was in 2024.
totally.
And that's what I'm going to start with. One of those things that didn't make my final list, but it did make my short list because I read it in the last 2 weeks. I was reading a bunch of stuff that I read number ones, and I was like, oh, I'll come back to this when it's collected, or whatever the case may be. And one of those things was Hexagon Bridge from Image Comics,
Heck yeah.
written in with art by Richard Blake. This follows a couple of explorers, Jacob and Elena, who find themselves trapped in a strange parallel dimension, and now their clairvoyant daughter has to find them using a sentient robot. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds very convoluted, and it is. It's a little. It's very interesting to follow along, but the thing that really brought me into this book was the art. The
Mhm.
art in this book is insane. Um, the way that Blake uses shapes and colors to represent different aspects of these dimensions or these planes of existence, the designs of the creatures or robots, or I don't know, entities that inhabit them, and then also just trying to have this effect of like you're actually traveling through these different dimensions. It is just such a tall task, but I think Blake really knocked it out of the park. If you enjoy symmetrical lines and like very cool geometrical shapes
Mhm.
with very light colors, this is the book for you. Like this book,
Sure.
it's I feel like it's the equivalent of ASMR, but like visually,
Hmm.
whatever that is. Because even without the story, this book is just like a visual feast. And I remember that from when I originally read the first issue, and then going back to it, and I'm like, I have to read this to make sure that this isn't something that I missed out on, because I saw it on a few people's list for 2024, because that's when the collection came out. And then there's this whole debate of like, well, when did it really come out? Like, whatever, make your own rules. It's your own list. Don't fight it.
Yeah.
Um, and the other cool thing is that the collection has like 20 pages of back matter where you can see like covers, character designs, storyboards.
Yo.
So like all this behind the scenes stuff of Blake just taking. I this was probably the only thing I've read from Richard Blake. I don't know if there's any other work out there, but it's definitely somebody that I'm gonna put on my list of like, gotta check out their next work whenever it comes out, or if they do something on Kickstarter or something like that.
Mhm.
Like you just have to go support that, because it is really, really cool. Now, have you guys, either of you, read this? I think
Mm-mm.
we talked about it on the show some
Yeah,
way.
I was a pretty big fan of this, if only because that first issue really, I don't know, there was something about it that drew me in this, like, it's very heady, it's very like, I don't know, it feels like a concept book that had a lot of art and Blake tried to like find a story that would work with the concepts and ideas that he wanted to play with. I personally do not think that like the story of this book is the compelling piece. I think it is Blake's depiction of like these extra, I don't know, like 4D, 5D worlds that the characters are traveling through and like experiencing. I think that's the thing that really makes the book interesting. I'd love to see Blake like experiment more and further that, like some of the ideas that he was playing with, because unfortunately it's like a 5-issue series and it ends, in my opinion, a little abruptly. And I would love to have just seen him, I don't know, exploring things through art and piecing little bits of story together just to try to work out whatever ideas he was playing with in the story. So overall, really love that book, but it didn't make my best of because unfortunately, I feel like it's not a book that I can like really hand to someone and be like, you're gonna love this. It's like, you're gonna love this, but let me explain that you need to approach this differently than you would most other pieces of fiction.
I definitely see what you mean, and that was one of the things that I really liked about it. That it wasn't like, as much as I enjoyed the story of like, you know, this woman searching for her parents that are lost in a weird dimension. The way that it ends, you don't really get a resolution to a lot of the things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just kind of life. Sometimes the story doesn't truly end, or like you never know, right?
Yeah.
Very like, you know, Inception, and I'm a big Nolan guy over here. So like, yeah,
big Nolan energy in this book is what you're saying.
only when it comes to that. Well, I guess the visuals too. Damn, yeah, that you're right. You nailed it, Mike. But yeah, that's something that I didn't even think about till that's why I like coming on the show and talking to you guys about stuff, because then you get these other ideas in my head and we get to talk, you know, see other points of views and like, how did you approach something? So, but yeah, that was really, really cool. I do have one more thing I want to mention real quick, because obviously I like to keep my reading to all spectrums of comic books. So I also want to recommend, what if Galactus transformed the Hulk #1?
Oh my! All right, Danny.
On the complete opposite side, and I only want to recommend it because Marvel is doing a little mini series of these one shots in which Galactus picks a different person from the Marvel universe to be their herald, which include Gambit. And now Mike's listening.
Oh, hold on! You've got my attention now.
Moon Knight, Rogue, and Spider-Man, and then of course we started with the Hulk. This is by Matt Grum. This one's by Matt Grum, who's done work on Power Rangers and some of the Supermassive, Radiant Black stuff. I don't remember exactly which series Grum did, but with art by Lan Medina, colors by Juan Chavez, and letters by Travis Lanham. And it is just, yeah, Galactus goes up to the Hulk and he tells him like, "Hey, I need a herald," but that's the only way that Bruce can keep the Earth safe from himself. So he's like, "Yeah, I'll go do it." And in the meanwhile, he tries to warn the planets that Galactus is coming for, like, "Hey, here's some plans for an escape ship. Get out." So he's still trying to save lives as the Herald of Galactus while still doing his job. So it's a very interesting book, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out with some other characters like Gambit, who's a little bit different. Moon Knight, who is, you know, kind of crazy out there. So like, what is that gonna look like? So yeah, I'm excited for this, and I love one shots. I think a one and done story that's done well, you know, really leaves you as satisfied as a book that's just as beautiful as Hexagon Bridge. So I'm kind of having cake and eating it too, like just with comics. So
I mean, the normal Marvel way would be to take this story and flesh it out to 4 issues, and they would just be like the plainest 4 issues you've ever read in your life. So I'm glad that they're trying to keep it at least a little contained. That's right. Paloma, have you heard of this at all? Have you been following this what if debacle stuff? That's crazy to me.
No, yeah, that is an insane lineup. I don't understand Gambit and then also separately Rogue. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. It felt like they should be in the same one too. Maybe they'll connect. I don't know. Feels like Marvel, the bullpen, they just have like a board on the wall with character names, and they're like, all right,
throwing darts
or like Mad Libs, right? All right, what if I like this? All right, great. And then just kind of fill in the blank. So, but it works. It's working. So.
That's what I need in my life is a Mad Libs, Marvel themed Mad Libs book where you just like take all of the classic events and dumb ideas that show up in Marvel books and just say when blanks shows up in Latveria, blank decides that blank is very blank, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a good Mad Lib, but you guys know what I mean. Yeah, it could be very fun. Well, Paloma, let me kick things over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been? Have you been reading anything good recently?
Well, I would say comics are great right now, and I'm like Danny, I'm excited for my Wednesdays to be normal again. Technically,
Mm-hmm.
my Tuesdays, my obligatory drop that I work in a comic book shop, it's just been wild with the holidays, I guess, happening on Wednesday, factories being closed. Love that people get their extra time off, but I feel like comic shop life has not been normal since Thanksgiving. So
Sure.
I'm excited for Wednesdays to be normal and fun for everyone again.
Has your shop experienced all of the weird delays and issues with Diamond and stuff now that
Yeah.
they've consolidated everything? I've heard that like across the board, at least on the East Coast, it's been pretty rough.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, because I don't know. I only know the Midwest, and there's like a ton of comic shops in my area anyway. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we're all like, "What is go?" It was all just like a surprise to everybody because no
Mm-hmm.
one, no one said anything inside data. We
Yeah.
were all like, "What? Where's the
I mean,
books?"
to add a little bit of context, I guess, for folks who are maybe not like constantly plugged into comic book news or at least the industry news, Diamond, one of the major distributors for a lot of comic books, action figures, plenty of stuff beyond just comics, but generally all things nerddom. You may have looked at a Diamond's previews book in the past. They, I think, very last minute decided to take their like New York State based distribution center and then consolidate it down to the only one distribution center for the entire United States, somewhere in the South. And because of that, a significant amount of delays just across the board of getting just regular books to people has it ended up with you're just not getting your books, which really, really stinks. On a Wednesday when a new book's supposed to be there, you're just not getting it either that week or until maybe the next week if you're lucky. I know one of the shops that I used to shop at, like I had a pull list with them, and I maybe mentioned this on the show before. They've been emailing me almost every single week to be like, hey, we still haven't gotten last week's orders. We're really, really sorry. Like, this is not us. This is Diamond. Here is their contact information, which I think is a really cool, bold move. But they're like,
Yeah.
this is not us. Like, we would love to get you other things if we could. We don't have a way to get them to you on time. We're very sorry, but like, we can't prevent this. There's nothing we can do about this. And I appreciate the transparency, right? Like, because I know that there are some comic book readers out there who would just be pissed and they would just scream and yell at some person like yourself, Paloma, who would just be like, where are my fucking comic books? And it's like, Paloma can't fix this.
Yeah.
Not even the owner of the store, not even
No.
the UPS driver can fix this, right? This is one company's distribution problems. So yeah, if you haven't heard, that's what's going on. I highly recommend you look up Comics Beat articles on it. They've done a really good amount of coverage on it. A couple other places as well, but I've heard nothing but just awful things over the last couple of weeks because this happened right near the end of the year, and it's like, of all times,
Yeah.
what a crazy time to do it. Anyways, sorry.
I can't imagine going to a comic shop and yelling at Paloma. Like, you don't yell
No
at the
one
people
has
that
yelled.
put your
No,
okay,
no.
Luckily, no one has yelled.
Don't yell at the people that pull your books. That way
Yeah.
they'll pull the nice ones and they'll keep them in order. You know.
Yeah.
But so, like Danny, I'm excited for Wednesdays to get back on track. And I was able to look at my new comics wall and just picked up this random number one because the art was really, really cool. It's called, sorry, my cat just entered the chat. It's called When I Lay My Vengeance Upon Thee, and it's written by Gus Moreno, and then the artist is Jacob Rebelka, and it's from Boom Studios, and it's really just we're following some priests. One of them is going through a redemption arc of some sort, and the other one does exorcisms, but only Vatican trained priests can do exorcisms. Don't quote me on that. That's the comics lore. So he's doing
Okay.
things maybe in a blasphemous way. But I thought the art was really, really captivating. I think that's what drew me to it initially, like where it's very stylized. I don't know who's actually on colors. I did not see that on my source, but it feels like what I would imagine Dante's Inferno styling could look like. We're not in hell or anything yet, but I really, really
Ah.
liked the art. I think that's what really drew me to it. I don't often read like things following like religious figures solely because I feel like some context would be lost on me, and I'm just like, what am I reading here? I'm missing all the references. Apparently the title is also a quote from the Bible, which
Oh,
it's
okay.
just a text I'm very unfamiliar with. So
Hey, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
normally I don't dabble, but yeah, the art really just drew me in. I'm curious. I'm excited to see where the story goes. There's like a lot of intrigue and mystery, and it's like, who are we supposed to trust? And I also saw that the artist previously did cyberpunk work, so to go from like cyberpunk sci-fi to this story, I find that quite intriguing because I feel like the style just fits so well.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. The same artist did Cyberpunk. That's like a that's a completely different world to be drawing in. Wow. Okay.
I did just check my preview, and Rebecca did both art, and they illustrated the whole thing,
Oh wow!
Oh,
which is
nice.
very interesting because I also read this book, and when I saw Paloma put it on the notes, I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm eager to hear somebody else because I love me an Exorcist story, like
Mm,
just David Pebbles recently had one,
yeah.
and then there's the Exorcism at 1600 pen that's gone up from IDW. So it looks like the devil's back in the pages of the comic. The devil's hot again.
Demons are
Um,
back on the menu, man.
that's right. But I enjoyed it. I will say the art took me a second to like calibrate,
Mm.
especially coming from like the other things that I had just read. I think people, if anything, is gonna. It reminds me the first time I read Juniba, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What's happening here?" But then once you kind of get used to it, it's very similar. Where like Paloma said, very stylized. I'm excited for the story though because it's very intriguing, and one of the priestess from Mexico City, which is where I'm from, so like definitely want to see. We gotta root for the home guy, you know. So
Okay. Well, I you've got me curious. When I Google this now, I see that Sam Jackson quote from Pulp Fiction comes up, so that makes sense now. Now I remember. Um, So, okay. Well, Paloma, if you keep reading this, let us know. It looks like this is a 5-issue miniseries,
Mhm.
so I'd be curious to see like how this book wraps up. I mean, I do appreciate a good, just like demons, like and all that kind of stuff story. I read Hellboy, I enjoy that stuff. So let me know.
Yeah.
Let me know how it goes. I feel like this is maybe scarier somehow. But yeah, let me I guess for me this week, comics have been very good. I have been like we're going to talk about this later in the show. But I've been trying to like push myself to just like read more comics more often, maybe not for so long, but just like a little bit at a time. And it's worked for the past week. I unfortunately did not get to read any comics on New Year's Day, which like is normally a yearly tradition for me. Normally I sit down and I read comics. Instead, I watched a lot of TV. Or no, I played a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. That's actually what I did. I watched a little bit of TV, and then I worked a lot on this very secret project that we have right now for the show. And when I say I worked, I mean, I literally was like 4 hours on my computer doing work on top of the work that I did like all the previous weekend. I mean, Danny and Paloma, you guys know, end of year at IRCB is always like a monster of time for me just because we've got so much stuff that we need to launch at the beginning of the year. Our Goodreads themes of the month went up for this year, so you can go check our Goodreads. You can see all the books that we're going to be reading each month by theme. We're doing a lot of planning for our reading challenge. If you're a Patreon member, and you're at the $5 tier and above, you can put a book on our reading list for this year. So if you're not already one and you join between when this episode airs and January 18th and send me a message, you can get your book on our reading list if you're that desperate to get it on there. But you should join it anyways because we got a lot of really cool stuff coming, including a new Patreon show that we are going to announce at the annual as well. That's coming a little bit later this year as Better Batmobile wraps up its second season. So a lot of stuff. All of that is on our Patreon schedule update that I posted that is huge and is available for public consumption. So if you go, there's going to be a link to that in the show notes as well. But yeah, a lot of really cool stuff. I've been working nonstop, so I haven't read a ton of comics, but I did finally sit down and read a couple of issues of stuff. Like I got caught up on Saga, got caught up on a couple manga. And after CK, our good pal in the Discord, has been talking about it nonstop, former guest on the show a couple times. I finally sat down and read John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America, number 1 through 4. It's 11 issue series. And I'm very excited to read more. But this is Simon Spurrier with art by Aaron Campbell and colors by Jordi Belair. And like I said, CK was talking about this in our Discord, and I always enjoyed like Constantine comics. Like every time I've sat down to read Constantine, I'm like, why am I not just like dedicating all my time to reading Constantine books? Because they're always so good. But I didn't know that this book was going to be like top tier, some of the best Constantine comics you could ever read. Like this book clicks and hits so well. I don't care if you know, I didn't know the lead up to this book. Apparently there's like a little bit of lead up because it's tied into the Sandman universe, like the new Sandman universe that DC's doing, but I really didn't know it. And so I just plopped into the first issue, and they give you enough context to just be like, roll with me, please. Each issue is going to kind of be a one-off story. It's going to be really, really cool. Sandman gets tied in a really interesting way. And I really think that Simon Spurrier like understands with a capital U John Constantine. Like he gets it in a way that I feel like very few other authors have ever gotten this character so well. Like knows how to write him, knows how to make John seem really charming while also being a huge shithead, and understand that he's always trying to do the right thing, but only for reasons that benefit himself, you know? And I say that having only read like different bouts of Constantine over the years. But this book like really emanates what a good Hellblazer story is. Like all of the pieces that I think Simon Spurrier really nails. Like John is in a weird place physically. He's in a bad place personally. And he's doing the quote right thing for his own selfish reasons. Like everyone around him sees it, can't help but assist him because technically he's doing the right thing, right? He's always roping people in, and they're all begrudgingly saying yes because they're like, well, if I don't help John, like he's going to die and his right thing is not going to be able to get finished. Right. And it's like, God damn it, John, I can't believe that you came to talk to me. Spurrier nails that in this book. But that is like only a piece of what this makes this book great, because the art in this story by Aaron Campbell and Jordi Belair is some of the most gorgeous comic art I've seen in like a haunting way since I read Universal Monsters Dracula. Right. Like, this book is so good looking. It's like unfair to compare this to other comics, because what Campbell is doing, it reminds me a lot of like Far Sector as a comic, where you're like, nobody could keep this up for indefinitely, right? But the fact that we got this little Far Sector book in the way that it looks, you're just like, I'm so pleased at how perfect it looks, because clearly the team got time to make sure this book looked as beautiful as it possibly could. And Campbell and Belair do this. And like, don't even get me started. Issue number 3 has this scene that like I forgot that I was like in the middle of a story. It's just like these 2-page spreads that are just, there's no panel borders, but multiple things are happening. And I feel like some readers may get lost because you don't have like a clear direction of like which way to read, left or right, up and down. But the art in those pages alone are just like, dude, you didn't have to go this hard for just like this DC book, right? Like it's so amazing looking. It's like this trippy moment that's happening, and all sorts of classic Constantine characters are involved in that. And I say classic, I mean Swamp Thing. Sorry, Swamp Thing's in the book. But like, it's so incredible. I like had to push myself to keep reading past that. So I think I want to recommend this to like everybody, but I know that Constantine isn't for everybody, right? Like he's a shithead. He's so sarcastic. It's sometimes very grating. But I think this book slaps. Like Spurrier is not only telling a really interesting, fun Constantine story where Constantine is stuck in America because of story reasons, but he's also using all of that as commentary on like the American quote unquote spirit. Like, what is it that makes America America? And how does John Constantine, like the most British guy there ever was, like how does he approach that and deal with that when he is faced with the, I don't want to say the worst of America, but like the parts of America that I think we as Americans all know of and are really ashamed of, but we can't help but admit that they are American things that make them kind of stink. I don't want to get into it because it does kind of spoil some stories, but I think that Spurrier does a great job of just like allowing John Constantine to be his mouthpiece for commenting on what is some of the shittier side of America, but also some of the greater sides of America that make America like, I don't have a better phrase for what I was going to say there, but it makes America like an interesting place for people, like for people that live in it, and something that we can be proud of. So like, I really love what he's doing with this book, and I'm only 4 issues in. There's 11 issues total. I cannot wait to read the rest, and I'm absolutely loving it. So, John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America, just incredible stuff. Incredible stuff.
I'm glad to hear you enjoy the book, Mike, especially because this is kind of a continuation of Cy Sperry's previous Constantine run, which is where because I read the first issue of this and I'm like, when did this happen in the Constantine lore?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then I looked into it and it's like, yeah, it all kind of comes from the other one, from the other series. So if you're gonna jump on this, I do recommend you check out the previous Cy Sperry run.
Sure.
Only to get the story. I don't know if I don't know about. I mean, the quality is probably pretty good because it's a Cy Sperry book.
Yeah.
But I can't guarantee on the art. I don't know who was on that.
Well, yeah, I didn't read the previous run. I always meant to, but I was like, well, this is the one that just came up, and I was like, let's read it. Like, I think that CK was talking about it. They said it was good. And yeah, so I was like, I jumped in not knowing that, but they do give a nice like little summary block to be like, hey, all this other stuff happened. All you need to know is that this happened to John, and there's these other people with him, and you can kind of go from there. The story works outside of that.
And if you don't want to do a DC book because you like to stick to indies or whatever, Cy Sperry did a book called Damn Them All that is pretty much using a Constantine-like character. And then in this one, you get art by Charlie Adlard of The Walking Dead fame.
Right.
So like, if you want to check that out, this one's a little bit more self-contained, so you don't have to worry about all the Swamp Things showing up or whatever the case may be.
I love Swamp Things showing up, Danny. Come on.
I'm just saying, not everybody might be as they don't want to dive down the DC rabbit hole.
That's true.
Googling who is this person and who is this other character and why do they have orange eyes.
Paloma, have you read much John Constantine stuff?
No, I only really read him when he is visiting Swamp Thing and Swamp Thing doesn't want him there, or when he's paired with other characters. Like I recently read him in Spirit World.
Okay.
And I really like the character, but I'm really interested in this book after your description. I think I'm going to go back and read the first Cy Sperry one because I've heard nothing but good things.
Same.
I feel like a ton of people really hopped on this book, so that's really cool to see because he's a fun guy.
Yeah, his writing style is some of my favorite. I'm very biased. Like one of my favorite comics of all time, period. I think top 3 is X-Men Legacy, his run that he did of X-Men, by far. But not for everybody. It's a very weird book, so steeped in continuity, I couldn't even begin to describe it. But for the time when it came out, for me personally, top tier book.
Like we mentioned, the occult is hot right now, so
this is true.
Go check it out.
2025 is going to be the year of the cult. But let's let's move on and let's talk about comic books that are on the top of our pile, comics that are new or old or just something we're trying to get off of our shelves. I want to shout out some of the folks hanging out with us on Discord today who are reading comics, and when we asked for them, this is what they said. Stephanie is going to be reading, or is currently reading, Shubik Lubik, which was on our reading challenge last year, which I need to get to. I just need to get it from the library. Didn't get to it last year, unfortunately. Paul G is going to be reading Across a Field of Starlight by Blue Delaquanti. Aaron is reading our book of the month this month that we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. 1 week. Next week. We're talking about it next week, actually, I think. Mythmakers, The Remarkable Fellowship of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, as nominated by our good pal Tom over on the Discord. And Hugh is reading Snockerl, trade paperbacks, volumes 2 and 3. And Emmett is reading Preacher, volume 1. So many words. I got to read that Emmett Mythmaker book.
Yeah. Godspeed, Emmett. You're going to need it.
Yeah. But let's talk about books that we're reading next. Let me kick things back over to you, Paloma. What is on the top of your pile?
On the top of my pile is New Champions #1. It's a Marvel book written by Steve Fox and art by Ivan Fiorelli. And it's just young people in costumes, maybe getting new powers and having to band together. I'm a sucker for that. Curious to meet these new characters. I like Steve Fox and how he does like team books. So I'm just here. I'm not going to be skeptical. I'm not going to worry about if these characters will be around 1 year from now. I'm just here for the fun.
Well, I applaud that. I feel like Champions is Marvel's like attempt. Like I don't want to say attempt, but they're like it's their trial series where they're like, can we
Mhm.
make a hero out of this person, right? I think that book is, I don't know, in the past has kind of made Miss Marvel, I think, or added to the Miss Marvel mythos of like, oh, she doesn't have to just be a solo character. We can't really put her on Avengers, but we can put her on Champions and see if she works on a team book, right? Same with like some of the young X-Men and everything, which, rip to those characters. But yeah.
Always remembered.
Yeah.
Well, I guess except by everyone that forgot that they existed in continuity, but everyone else remembers them.
Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned though in your notes at
Oh,
least,
yes.
like that you maybe want to read Strange Academy from this book. I guess what is, I only ask as a diehard Strange Academy fan, what has prevented you from reading Strange Academy?
I think I'm not a big Magic Marvel girly.
Okay.
I don't have anything else against those characters. I think sometimes I'm like, you can't have science and magic. There's too much happening.
Interesting.
That's all.
Okay.
Sometimes I flip flops, where sometimes I'm like, there's too much. I'm also not a big space girly. I don't read a lot of Green Lantern, even though I love specific Green Lanterns.
Okay.
Like Joe, Far Sector Green Lantern. Love her.
Yeah.
So I think it's just something that I don't know. It's not just like I'm gonna zap you with my powers. There's more things involved.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
that's all. I love Magic School. Maybe I'm also
Right.
anti-Scarlet Witch. I don't know if she's there. I don't really have any true shade against her. Besides, I'll never forgive her for No More Mutants.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing. I think you would like Strange Academy if you liked Gotham Academy. How about that?
I did
you
love
like
Gotham Academy, yes.
I think you'll like Strange Academy in that regard. So this is me putting out a challenge to you, Paloma. I would say if you can read Volume 1 of Strange Academy, if you don't like it, I don't know, I'll eat a shoe or something. I mean, maybe not that extreme, but
I'm confident I'll like it. My only hesitance
yeah.
was just all the magic.
Yeah. Well, it's more of a school drama than it is a magic book, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. They just happen to do magic.
They just have, yeah, exactly. Well, let me talk really quick about a book that I'm looking forward to reading next. There's spoilers. Maybe you've already read it. This is The Lucky Devils #1, which comes out this week from Image Comics. This is written by Charles Soule, art by Ryan Brown. If you know this team, they did 8 Billion Genies, they did Curse Words, very goofy, very bombastic, very just weird books that have a lot of, I don't know, I want to say like millennial core humor at the center of it, which is fine, right? As a millennial, it's fine by me. But nonetheless, they're very funny books, very colorful books, very, I don't want to say gross books, but they just have a particular look. Like Ryan Brown's art is so identifiable from 10 miles away in my mind. It's always interesting to see what these two are doing because clearly they're just buds who just want to do fun comics. And if you haven't read any more of their other books, I recommend at least sitting down and reading 8 Billion Genies just to get a taste of kind of the weird things that they're going to do. But Lucky Devils #1 comes out this week. The core of this book is, what if all of the problems in your life were caused by a little devil who spent all of their time just trying to find ways to make you upset? That's this book. I don't want to say that I'm giving anything away because there's so much more going on in this story than I just described, but that's pretty much the book. It's kind of funny. Like if you go with it, understanding that it's kind of funny. I don't know. I looked at this book. I was like, I don't know, what could this possibly be? I was worried it was going to be a rehash of 8 Billion Genies in some way. And in some ways, it's the exact opposite of 8 Billion Genies. It's like hyper focused on 2 characters, maybe 4 characters, depending on how you approach it. And I don't know, try this #1. I cannot explain it any further than that. It's funny and it's goofy. And I've never felt so seen by a book in my life, in the sense that like the problems that the people are dealing with in this book, I'm like, oh no, I've had these thoughts. Oh, am I a bad person? I really think it's like the most true to life nailing of people that I've read in a book in a long time, especially just like right now in 2025. Like Charles Soule and Ryan Brown, they like get it in a way that I'm like, oh, this book's probably going to hurt, or it's going to be so funny that I won't be able to explain it to anybody. So I cannot say anything other than just go try #1, because if it doesn't click, the rest of this book probably not work for you. But if it clicks even just a little bit, you're probably going to love this book. that is my recommendation here. Danny, I know that you took a look at this book too, right?
Yeah, so funny enough, when I was doing the notes, Mike hadn't really filled in his stuff, and I just put on here like a quick shout out to Lucky Devils #1 because since I had read it, I didn't want to put it on the top of my pile, so I'm glad Mike did. But it's really my favorite thing about this one was like, especially once I got to the end, and I went back to look at it because I'm working on a review video. I'm like, oh, Ryan Brown is doing some stuff with colors that once you are into the secret of the book, you realize that's going on. And then, like Mike said, like I don't know, I really like 8 Billion Genies, but like I don't want this book to be just that again, and it's
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
I really love it for that. So I also very much enjoyed it. I love this team, anyways. Although I haven't read Kurzweil, which is funny, only because I feel like it's intimidating because there's like 25 issues, whereas some of his other stuff I mean, some of the other stuff is a little bit shorter. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I like Charles Soule a lot too. Like I've been reading his stuff for years. So yeah, I also recommend this one.
Yeah. Well, I guess Danny, let's round things out with you. What is on the top of your pile this week?
Well, Mike, Paloma, as you guys know, 2024 was the year of the anthology and the
Mm.
year in which we got back EC Comics. And I picked an EC comic, delivered by Oni Press. This is their new anthology, Cruel Kingdom. This is their dark fantasy anthology, whereas Epithets from the Abyss was their horror, Cruel Universe was their sci-fi. This is now their dark fantasy. Now, EC Comics never really delved into fantasy, from what I was talking to my co-host on our show.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting. I like that. I like that they are expanding what the brand can be, while still keeping that core conceit of like these are just little standalone stories. And I love that. And looking at some of the creatives on this one, we have Al Ewing, Chris Condon, Greg Pak. Like those are some of my favorite writers
That's
ever. And then
crazy.
you have artists like Kano and Leo Max. So like this is gonna be insane. If anything, just so you can have a book with all those creators on it, and you can take it to your con and get it signed by a bunch of people without having to carry $20.
Yeah.
But on top of it, I love the anthology format. This is gonna be 40 pages, so if you don't like one story, go on to the next one. And then there are these little, at least in the other two series, there were these little like 1 page. I don't know. I don't want to call them pinups because they're not pinups, right? But it's just like a 1 page little art thing that kind of falls within that theme of the dark fantasy or horror or sci-fi or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on which one you're reading. So not only are the collections of the other ones coming out pretty soon, so make sure to check those out. But yeah, Cruel Kingdom comes out this week. Instabuy. Just add it to my pull list immediately. I don't need to know anything. I didn't even need to know who was on this book. I'm very excited to read it because I love anthologies. It is my new favorite way to read books, especially because I read so many things that are like steeped in continuity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nice to have an 8 page story that has a finite resolution. So yeah, and if I'm not on the show by the time this comes out, Ice Cream Man 43 is going to be a 1 page stories, full of 1 page
Yeah.
stories. I've got a chance to read it. Oh my goodness. So yeah, keep those anthology books going, people. Trust me, you want those in your collections.
Yeah, I'm very excited to buy that single issue. I normally collect Ice Cream Man in trade, though I'm kicking myself over that. I think I probably should maybe go on eBay and see if how much money I can spend on getting all the back issues. But yeah, I did pull this specific issue because I do want a copy of this one that has like Grant Morrison, Kelly Sue DeConnick, or Matt Fraction. One of the other like 20 different people in this book are
Mhm.
in this issue. It's crazy. I'm very excited to see what they do because I'm like, I don't know, love Ice Cream Man, but like other people writing Ice Cream Man,
Yeah.
who's touching this universe? I'm so scared. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think most of the art's still done by Martin Morazzo.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zoe Thurgood did her own page. And there might be a few other people that did their own page, but for the most part, it's all still Martin Morazzo's like Ice Cream Man look in all these different stories. So
That's exciting. Very exciting. Well, before we wrap up today, I want to do a thing that we do every year at the start of this year. And I realized right before we started recording that we did this exact same kind of episode 2 years ago with me and Paloma and Danny, where we talked about our comic book New Year's resolutions, things that we want to do for this year in terms of comic book reading. I don't know. That could be all over the board. Do you want to read less? Do you want to read more? Do you want to be more focused? Do you want to be less focused? Do you want to be more steeped in continuity, less steeped in continuity? Maybe things aren't as black and white as I'm making out to be. But, way back in episode 355, almost 100 episodes ago, because this is episode 450, which, we don't do a lot of number celebrations on the show, but that's kind of crazy, 450 episodes of I Read Comic Books. But way back 195 episodes ago, we did do this before. We had some interesting things that we were trying to do. And I'm not going to call anybody out about their stuff, so I'll leave it to you guys if you want to. But I know that for myself, I told myself I wanted to finish reading some big reads that I had been in the middle of. Of those, I only completed one. The other ones that I was supposed to have done was Dorohedoro, which, looking at my shelf, I only have 2 volumes left. I don't know why I haven't done that. I wanted to finish reading Blade of the Immortal, which I need to just start over at this point because it's been way too long. But I did finish reading Akira, and I did finish reading at least Usagi Yojimbo Volume 7, because I didn't want to get into the Dark Horse stuff, but I did want to get to the Fantagraphic stuff, and I did finish at least those last 2. So this year, I'm trying to not read as many big things, but we'll see. Go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to say, funny enough, Usagi Yojimbo is now back at Dark Horse.
I know.
Year, so...
so we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I want to read more Usagi Yojimbo. I think the first 7 volumes for me is kind of perfect. I know that there are some other really good stories that happen after those first 7, but to me, those first 7 are just so pure and so well crafted. I don't know. I don't know if I want to get any more in my life, but who knows? I don't know. Paloma and Danny, any thoughts about where you were in 2023 versus where you are now, what you're trying to accomplish?
Oh, I think I was trying to be in my comic scholar era. I saw that one of my things was to go back and read some iconic, classic, I feel like modern day informing comics. And one of them was Days of Future Past. Did not read that.
Okay.
Sometimes,
back on the list.
Back on the list. We'll try again. Sometimes there's just a lot of words on a page. Even if I like some people's previous works and I want to know the background of things, sometimes a lot of words in only so many panels.
I mean, I think someone in our Discord was just talking about this, about how some of those older comics, I mean, this was published in 1981, but some of those older comics are just pages and pages and pages and pages of writing, which is sometimes a bit much. It's a little unnecessary, maybe. I get that.
But yeah, I would say accomplished nothing from 2023. But similar, maybe less specific goals for 2025 at least. So those will be a little bit more attainable, I think.
Okay. Well, Danny, what about you? And then maybe we'll go into our individual plans for this year.
Yeah. No, I was looking at them, and I one of the things was to read more standalone graphic novels, in the vein of Squire and Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
While I have not read those specific ones, I have read more graphic novels, just standalone things. So
okay,
escape the weekly stuff and the single issues. I also wanted to stop buying so many Star Wars books, and I actually have cut down on Star Wars books.
Whoa!
I'm only picking up the main Star Wars book.
Nice.
And Dr. Aphra and Vader, like I mentioned here. Even the crossovers is not something that I've been picking up. So I don't know if that's just because maybe Star Wars hasn't caught my attention as much. I'm a little behind on some of the main series.
Could be.
I did not bag and board my books. They're still all over. So maybe I could put that one back on the list. And then if somebody goes back and listens to the episode, which is, what is it, Mike? 350?
355, yeah.
355. On the notes, I put finally read, and then I redacted it because I was being dramatic.
Yeah.
So unless I go back to the episode, I don't know what it is. So if you go back and read it.
Something in my head says that I think when we recorded the episode, you didn't mention that. And then we talked about it after, and you were like, I forgot what it was. Something in my head says that. Maybe.
if anybody goes back to listens to that episode,
Uh-huh.
and then comes and asks me on the Discord or social media or whatever, I'll let you know if I read it or not.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, I guess with that in mind, really quick, Paloma, let's start with you. I guess what are your goals for this year? Anything you're trying to accomplish with your comic reading?
Yeah, I do like to keep up with reading like 1 to 2 complete manga series.
Okay.
2024, I read of all of Golden Kamui because it was available on Viz's web only manga reading. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really awesome. And then I think Insomniacs After School was the other one that I finished, which was also on the app. Loved both of those, both very different. And these don't have to be, I think Golden Kamuy is like 31 volumes. I don't need to read a 31 volume series, but maybe I put Dorohedoro on my list as a possibility. And that one's 16?
23.
Oh, it'll still be on the list.
And I'll tell you, those last 5 volumes are thick
Oh.
with like 4 C's. They're big old volumes.
Okay.
And I could also tell you, I don't know why they're big old volumes because some of them just cut off in the middle of a story, and you're like, what was going on here? But I really think like the last couple of volumes are really just like she's just doing one huge story, so it's kind of there's just no good place to cut them off. So yeah.
Okay.
Either way, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Very gory, but it's fun.
I'm hyped for that. I'm trying to just try different things, get a little out of my zone of things looking pretty, and maybe more into like the grittier stuff. I also wanted to try more horror, so kind of segueing from there. I read Nice House on the Lake for the first time this past year, and it's not like super scary horror. It's probably more psychological thriller, but I want to dabble. People really like the scary stuff, and I want to be in the know.
Yeah. Love that stuff. Danny, what about you? Well, maybe we'll bounce around here because I know you got a couple other things, Paloma. But Danny, what's on your list for this year?
This year for sure, I want to keep better track of what I'm reading. I was not very good about putting stuff on Goodreads or, like just keeping track of the things that I have been reading. So like doing a best of at the end of the year was pretty challenging because then I was like, did I read this already? I had to go Google a bunch of people's lists and see if I had already read stuff like that. And as I was discovering that, I forgot to put this on my list, and now I got to go check it out and read it or whatever. So I want to keep track. At least my goal is anything that I try a new single issue, because I read so many number ones just because they, publishers are kind enough to send me stuff to look at. So I read a lot of those. And then also anything that I do check out as a collection, or when it comes out on the trade, that if I've already read it, I like to make sure I log that on Goodreads. I think that's a good middle ground that feels achievable, right? Because goals have to be smart, and one of those letters means achievable or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
But achievable. Kara's probably going in the listening like she knows exactly what that stands for. Yeah. So that's one of my things.
Nice. Yeah. I'll just jump right off of that. As my goal is to really create an accomplishable reading list for this year. In the past, I've like taken my big reading spreadsheet and I've had a tab that's just like big reads, and it's like 100 different series that I know that I want to read. And every time I see that list, I always get like choice paralysis or whatever that's called, like where you see so many things, you're just like, I can't pick anything. So my thought is to probably over the next like week or two is just like take that list and narrow it down to stuff that I actually want to read, right? Because I read all of Hellboy, just the Hellboy series this past year, and it was really cool. It was really fun to just like be enveloped in that whole series, knowing that it was going to come to an end in heavy quotes. Like Hellboy doesn't end, but it does end, right? Because you can read Hellboy in Hell and all that stuff. But I just read volumes 1 through 12, and I had a really good time doing that. And I really want to do that again this year. I think I want to grab like 2 manga series that I can read, that I can complete. I think Naruto has to be on the list because I've started it, and I would love to just be able to understand Naruto completely. I'm probably going to find another manga series that I want to read, or maybe I'll reread something. I don't know, like Monster, I think would be a really fun book to go back and reread just because I read it in quick succession in like 2020 and 2021. I read it so fervently that I barely remember some of it. So I don't know. I think, manga, I want to at least get like one manga series, like a bigger one under my belt. And then there's a couple of comic book series that have been on my list forever that I want to read. Like let me just pull this page up really quick because it's just sitting here doing nothing. Like Rumble is a book series that I bought all of and I never read. Godhead is a series that I bought way back in the day in a Comixology sale that I want to read. Copra, I've been meaning to go back and read. But part of it is just like some of these series I really want to read, but then I sit down and read them. And I'm not saying any of those series are maybe in this list, but they're kind of boring or they don't catch me. And so I'm like, if a book, I'm trying to hold myself to the same standard that I had last year, which is like, if a book doesn't catch me immediately after an issue or 2 or 3, I really got to just be fervent about dropping it and not wanting to read it. Because I've fallen into that pit in the past of just like, I'll just keep buying this series and see if it gets better. And then I never read it because I'm like, I got to go back and read whatever the series is. And I never read it, right? So I'm going to try to make a list of big reads that I'm going to actually be able to read this year alongside of all the other stuff that I'm reading. That's one of my big goals is just get the list. And then from there, I can take action on it. So, yeah. I don't know, Danny, I see you've also got like, you're keeping your collection up to date. And I'd like... God, I wish it would be so nice if I had just a list available, because then I could stop double buying comic books at my shop. I don't know if you guys run into that, but I do that far too often.
Yeah, because I use the COZ app, and this is not a sponsored or anything.
Sure.
Although they want to reach out to our
CLZ, you can give me a call.
I normally like on Wednesdays I'll scan everything, but like you can also scan in like hardcovers and manga and like all this stuff. So like it's there for me to just point my phone at stuff at the barcodes and do it. Unless it's a foil book, then that takes a little bit more finessing. But yeah, just I want to stop. I want to know what's in my collection and be able to like parcel through it and look at it and figure out. Maybe there's some stuff I want to, because that'll allow me to be like, oh, maybe I need to get rid of this, or I need to go find it in my boxes and like, I don't need this anymore. I bought the collection. So yeah, definitely just make sure that I update, because the first time I did that, it took weeks for me to get through everything. The first time I put it in my collection, but I've been really bad at it in the past few months. So want to get back on that. Also, it shows you how much you spend and how much your books are worth. So, stats are good.
I don't need that first one, but maybe the second one.
Yeah,
right. Okay, well that's Danny, I like that. Maybe I'm gonna give this a try. How much does this cost? $20 a year. All right, it's worth it. Paloma, what else is on your list? I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with that.
I guess with keeping up with what I like have in my collection, I'm like, do I cut back on floppies? Do I cut back on singles? I feel like 2024 was my big like single issue series years, because like I want to be on the hype. I want to be on the hype train. I don't need to subscribe to Transformers, but I want to be there. I want to be like everyone else.
Right. I get that. I feel that. I subscribe to Transformers and then only read it in trade, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah, it's just one of those things, I don't know, or like limited series, they would collect so well, but I'm like, I have to support the limited series to let them know that I like this.
I know. I wish that we like had a little bit of insight into like, do collection trade, like collections really count towards making sure like future collections can come out? Like, I don't know. I really just want to know that. I wish someone was transparent about this stuff. At least at the big two, it would be nice. But can't get what we want, I guess.
I wish you could assemble 12 floppies into like a hardcover. Like once you have them all,
oh, you can.
They just transform into.
There are people out there on the internet who will do that for you. I mean, it costs too much money, but you can take your original comic book pages and you can turn them into hardbound collections and stuff with custom covers and everything. But I mean, like, it's way expensive, but you can do it.
Maybe that should be my resolution, to learn how to bind books.
Oh,
that's cool. That's really cool.
I would just end up buying 2 copies of everything because I don't want to rip off the original.
Right. So Danny not only is spending all this money to bind his books together, but he's double buying everything so that he can bind them together. I love this for you. This is like a Warhammer 40K hobby, Danny. Like, it's never ending and you're never going to be satisfied.
Henry Cavill could never.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll talk about one more habit that I've got here, really, is like because the other one is one that I said in 2023 and I did not do it. So I'm probably not going to do it again this year, but which is to sell or give away more comic books. And while I did do some of that on our Discord, I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to do because it's so hard. But the thing I actually want to do this year, which is I want to make a better reading habit for myself of reading less, but more frequently. So like, rather than sitting down and reading 500, 700 pages of comics in a day, right? Which is kind of how I've approached it over the last year of like, I was looking at my stats for the year. I was like, oh my God, there are so many days where I read like 300, 400, 500 pages in a sitting. Whereas what's I think is a healthier way to approach it is to read like 40 to 60 to 100 pages a day, right? Across single issues, graphic novels, whatever. So like, as long as I'm reading like 1 or 2 comics a day, I'll probably get through a lot more comics than if I just read like once a week if I have time, right? Because if you can't, I don't know. So my thought is I want to just try to read a little bit every day, even if it's just an issue or a half a graphic novel or something, just something. Because I have this problem in my head where I'm like, when I sit down to read comics, I have to read this stack, or I have to read this entire graphic novel, or I have to read this entire, collection. And it turns out, just like a prose book, just like any other piece of media, you can press pause and go do something else and come back and the story will still be just as fresh. So I'm really trying to embrace that. I've been doing it for the past week where I've just read like 1 or 2 issues a day. And it's nice because it doesn't feel like I have to sit down and be like, I'm reading comics, nothing else can bother me. So yeah, trying to break that habit, I guess, and get into a new reading habit. That's a big one for me this year.
I really like that. I like that you don't want to be at the mercy of the stack.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so daunting. Because like, who doesn't sit down with like their stack of like, oh, here's my like 10 comics from like the past like 2 weeks, and then you're just like, I actually don't feel like reading this one today. I don't want to read any of my superhero titles today, but I have to because of the stack.
Because of the stack, yeah. Or today's the only day that I can read all these comics, when it's like, spoilers, you can read comics anytime that you want. But yeah, part of that is also me intentionally like taking the comic reading apps that I have and putting them front and center in my phone. Not to like distract myself, but to remind myself that you don't have to open TikTok if you have nothing to do. You can open the Marvel app or the DC app or the Amazon app if I fucking have to, to read these comic books. Or my PDF reader, right, of all the Kickstarter books that I've got, and just like get them on my phone, have them at the ready so that when I've got 20 minutes, I can read an issue of X-Men, or I can read an issue of something that I've got as a PDF, or just a piece of that graphic novel that I backed on Kickstarter. So I don't know. I'm trying to get into that because, the stack, while is fun and is a good friend, also intimidating. It's that friend that you love to be around, but you're like, God, if I don't show up, they're gonna think I'm stupid. And you're like, why do I think about this about a friend of mine? It's a whole other thing. Maybe that's just me.
You need to put Googly-Eyes on your stack, so it's less intimidating.
Interesting. Yeah. Danny, any, or I guess Paloma, any last thoughts for you, or Danny? I guess you guys, if you had any other plans or resolutions for 2025 around your comic reading before we wrap up here.
Just want to read cool stuff. I do really want to try and read some classic stories because I feel like I haven't since I was like a teenager in my early 20s.
Okay.
The only thing is, in my secret shame, actually complete the Goodreads challenge for the year because I didn't do it for 2024. I can't even tell you what books were on that list. And it's just, I read so much every week, and a lot of it is because I'm doing a bunch of video reviews and all that. But I need to take time to be more involved with the Goodreads challenge, especially because I know how hard, Mike and Aaron and Kate and everybody that's doing all that stuff, working on it. So yeah, once the challenge is out, which will be announced later on, right?
Yeah, February 1st is when the challenge will be out.
Well, hopefully I can at least knock one of those out a month, depending on how many books there are. So yeah, I'll try to be better at that.
That's all we're asking for, But I think that is where we're going to call it here for today. I think we've got some good resolutions. Maybe next year I'll get 2 other people to be on the show.
And then in 2 years we'll come back
and then I'll have
this
you
episode again.
Exactly, and we'll follow up in 2 years. But no, this has been fun. Danny, Paloma, thank you guys today. I really appreciate the time. Thank you, Kara, for proof listening today. Thank you to everyone listening live. You're fantastic human beings. Next week's episode is going to be a special guest episode. We're having Aubrey and Chris talk about their Kickstarter called Nunya. It's a karate nun comic book that's coming out on Kickstarter. Just launched the other day. It's going to be very exciting. And we're going to be reading our Goodreads book of the month, which is called Mythworks, that I talked about earlier. It's called Mythworks, The Remarkable Fellowship of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. So we're going to be reading that book and discussing it as part of the episode. It's going to be a really fun time, so make sure to join us next week live on Discord. But I think until then, I'll say thanks to Zander. Thanks again to everybody listening. Welcome to 2025. We have so much stuff. Make sure you tune in to the annual. It's going to be amazing. I'm so hyped for this year. I guess until next time, comics are good, and so are you.